Cloudcast Media. Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, and you're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest-running community podcast. We're now in our 18th year, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union for 6 decades. I've been doing just great things through San Diego, from literacy to, working with folks on hunger-related groups and all that business. Just honored to be with them. We're going to be chatting with my new good friend, Deborah Serra, and talking about her novel, Lost in Thought. So if we're ready, how you doing, Deborah?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here. Let's get right to it here. So you have written plays, novels, memoirs, but you started in television, wrote films starring Sigourney Weaver, Beau Bridges, Delta Burke, and others. How did you get into screenwriting?
Interesting. That was actually a purely economic decision. I was living in New York City, working in an advertising company that went under, and trying to make it on unemployment, not making it, and wanted always to be a writer, but kind of needed to hit rock bottom because then there's nothing to lose. There's no great path to becoming a writer in the United States. It's hard to do, and there's not a lot of encouragement. So I called a relative and said, is it okay if I move into your bedroom in LA? I moved to LA and just started writing for the money I needed to support myself. And I knew that the only place in the United States where you could certainly make a living as a writer was in the television field.
Right. Okay. So you're doing this, you're in television, you're screenwriting. Where was the epiphany? I'm going to try a novel. When did that happen?
Oh, no, that was always there. So the television career went great. I have no complaints, but writing for television is very restrictive. And I always wanted to be set free. And so it was in the back of my mind, and I just had to get to a point where I felt comfortable writing a novel and knowing if no one ever read it, it would still be okay.
Yeah, I guess that's got to be something that a writer's got to get used to, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. So you've written drama, comedy, nonfiction, essays, children's book, and all that. But you also have a gritty, violent thriller like Primal. Talk about that.
Yeah, so Primal, I wrote Primal for a reason. When I was living in Los Angeles as a female writer, I started obviously in children's programming because that's where they wanted me to be. And I very much wanted to make the move into more dramatic writing. And I'd been told over and over again that, women just don't write action. They just don't. And so I wrote this really nasty, gritty, profane thriller. And I had my agent at CAA at the time market it under my initials, D.A. Serra, so that it was gender neutral. And I was able to sell it to Jim Cameron, but it would not have been read if it had been under my original Deborah Serra gender name. That's changed now. I mean, this was a long time ago. This was 30 years ago, and it's gotten a lot better since then. But initially, it was just to prove that I can write thrillers. I can write nasty.
Okay, so you're writing nasty, and was your mom alive when you wrote this, correct?
Yes, and she's still here.
Very good. And what her reaction when she read it?
She's always been incredibly supportive. Maybe a little shocked by the language and the bloodletting, but always supportive.
Very, very good. And anybody else in the family that looked at it and didn't pass out?
Well, they're very kind. So.
Okay. All right. So they tell you the truth, though, correct?
No.
I guess they wouldn't on this. So you're currently an acquisition editor at the short story magazine After Dinner Conversation. Where do they publish?
So yeah, that's an interesting literary journal that does publish monthly in hardcover and then also Substack. They do ethics and philosophical short stories. with the focus on something that you could have a 20-minute argument about after dinner, which is why it's called After Dinner Conversation. So I read and help them choose which stories will go into their journal.
So when you start a project, are you thinking about the plot? Are you thinking about the character? Are you thinking about the theme? What do you think about first? Or do they all sort of mesh together?
Well, mainly with me, it's character. I usually think of someone. It was more of a blend with this particular book, Lost in Thought, because I had something I wanted to say on top of the character, or actually, in this case, underneath the character. The theme runs underneath. So yeah, this generally is character, but this time it was a mix.
So is it based on a character that you know personally?
No, I made her up.
Okay, well, in this story, but how about other stories you've written? Do you make up every one of your characters?
Well, no, I did a memoir with my sister about driving around Ireland, and so that was all real.
Right.
Primal, I've had a number of people ask me, who am I in this book, or who am I in that book? And I frequently say, have you read Primal? I mean, I'm not any of those people, but I feel like if I want to really create a character who's living and breathing and fleshy, there's always just a little touch of me in it somewhere.
Okay, so that means there's a touch of you in Lost in Thought?
Yes, I would say, and it's more the environment. I mean, I loved living in New York City.
Okay.
And the city is very much a character in the book. And so I think you see it there.
Okay, we may get to that in a little bit over here. So you've taught screenwriting at UCSD and workshops nationwide. Is there a particular piece of advice that you share with new writers? And is it different from screenwriters than it is from novelists?
Well, when I was teaching at UCSD, it was screenwriting. And I had two things that I wanted to say. One is it's really, really important at every step in your fiction writing to say, what is the absolute worst thing that could happen to my character right now? And then write that. Surprise people. I did have one student that I remember was really interesting because I had finished the class, the Screenwriting 101, and he said, okay, so are you gonna do a screenwriting, second level? And I said, yeah, it's just a couple of words. And I wrote it up on the board, move to LA.
Okay, all right. And did that person move to LA?
I don't know, but he should have. He was very talented.
All right, very, very, very good. So what skill or attributes should a writer have? I always love to ask this question of authors.
You really have to just sit down. It's just, it's hours spent. And I run into people everywhere I go who say, oh, I should have been a writer. I could have been a writer. I was a writer. I wrote when I was in high school. And I just always ask, well, how many hours a day do you spend sitting in front of a computer or with your pad and pen writing? Because if you're not doing 5 or 6 hours a day, you may have a hobby, but you're not a writer.
All right, so there's a lot of grit to that. How about thick skin? Do you have to have a thick skin?
Well, yeah. I mean, in screenwriting, you need a really, really thick skin because you basically go into a room to pitch to people who can't do what you do, but are really big on telling you you're doing it wrong.
Right. So, when you did your novel, you're working with many editors and all that business. Is some of the feedback harsh?
No, I wouldn't say so. I've never had really harsh feedback. I have a couple of friends who do first readers for me, and they're I do find that writers are generally very kind to other writers when they're giving notes. It's the suits that aren't necessarily as kind.
Yeah. A million years ago, I was a sports writer, and before that, I remember doing some classes in San Diego State as a journalism major. And I remember my first assignment in this writing for the media class, the professor gave me an F- and wrote, F- have you ever written before? And of course, when my head spun around, I said, are you kidding me? And it turned out to be my best professor, because it was really good, honest feedback. And I said, yes, I've written before. And we became really good friends on this. But you learn right then and there, if you let this thing affect you, you won't be a good writer.
Oh, no, you can't. And I think that's less of a problem in the narrative, novel writing, short story world than it is in screenwriting, where, it can be, notes can be pretty brutal. But with my experience, narrative writing, the people who have read, the editors I've worked with, it's all been very positive. There's always something good you can say about someone's work, always. So that's been my experience.
I think that's great. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, and you're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show. We're brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, who for 60 years have been supporting and really focusing on important San Diego County causes. We are enjoying a conversation with author Deborah Serra about her novel, Lost in Thought. So what inspired you to have neuroscience as an underlying theme or above theme or whatever theme?
It was not, I am not a scientist. I'm a storyteller. But I think the first time I started thinking about it, there's something, it's called an earworm, which is a terrible term for it. But what it is when you have a little snippet of music or a piece of dialogue or something that's running in the back of your mind, and it's just running there over and over, and you can't seem to stop it. And one day I was being driven crazy by a Bon Jovi song, and I just thought, why can't I stop this? And then I thought, why can't I fall asleep? And why did I say that? And why did I laugh? And all of a sudden, the whys seemed to compound. And I wondered, really, who's in control here? Who's the puppet master? Because there's a lot of things that I'm doing that I'm not deliberating about. And I started thinking about it, and then I started reading about it, and I just became increasingly interested in what we believe we're doing, we're thinking, when we're really being fed by an unconscious puppet master.
Right. So there's got to be a time when you first heard this term neuroscience, correct?
Yeah, it was probably when I went to a book signing with Patricia Churchland, who had just written the book Brain Trust.
Okay.
And I had gone to the book signing, and I'd sat there, and I don't even really know. Well, here we go. I didn't know what made me go to this book signing. Obviously, something in my unconscious mind made me interested to go to this book signing. And when I did, I bought her book, and that led me down this path.
Right. So now you're meeting Patricia, you're doing the book signing, you're learning about neuroscience. And did you say my next piece of work is going to be focused on this?
No, it literally infiltrated a book I was already writing. I think for me, what I like to say to people when they're trying to appreciate how out of control they really are is there's two things that we do that we all do. One is I'm sitting here talking to you, and if I asked everybody here to please talk to the person next to them, they're going to just start talking. Well, your unconscious has learned the language, the vocabulary, the semantics. It makes accommodation for who you're talking to, their age, the room you're in. You're not controlling any of that. You're not deliberate. It'd be a very, very slow conversation if you were deliberating on your words. So that's one way for people to think, this is beneath my conscious level. This is subliminal. And then everybody, certainly, who lives around here has been in the situation where they've left to go to work or the store or the dentist or whatever, and an hour later they're there. Okay, well, you don't remember going there. Who stopped at the stop signs? Who went around that car that jutted out in front of you? So these are just experiences that became more and more interesting to me. And then I had a book that I was working on with this character, and it became embedded in that, and then became what it was about.
Right. So now with this character and characters, we're going to get into those in a few seconds here. So the theme of decision making and unconscious choices, underlie this story. Do you think you're going to have, I don't say a sequel to Lost in Thought, but the next novel you have will also have neuroscience involved?
Gee, I hope not.
Well, you don't know.
Well, no, but I mean, one of the reasons I wrote in all these different genres, adaptation and musicals and drama and true stories, is because I really like change. And so while I'll continue to read and continue to be fascinated by it, I hope if I start something, it's totally different.
We'll just have to see, won't we?
I guess we'll have to see.
Very good. So the main characters in the book appear to be driven or victims of the subliminal processes in their own mind. So you talk about the four main characters?
I do. The lead character, Ilana, her journey is very clear. It's the story you're reading. And she does have a lot of questions that are presented to her and take her down this path where she wants to understand how it is she got where she is in life. What did she really choose, and what was the track she was on that she never saw? There are three other characters that are driven by their unconscious choices, as we all are. One, and the one I feel really the worst for, is Adam, who is her boyfriend. He doesn't even realize, the reader will realize, but he doesn't realize that he was initially attracted to Ilana because of an incident that happened when he was 10 years old with a girl he fell in love with who rejected him. And he doesn't even realize that they look similar all these years later. But the reason I feel most sorry for Adam is because he is a neuroscientist and he is studying all these things, and he writes about it and he researches. And then when Ilana has this betrayal against their relationship, he has a moment when he has to decide, she's using these words. She's saying, I couldn't help it. I didn't know this was going to happen. It was like I was out of control. And so now he's in a situation where he either has to believe what he's been saying all this time, that, yeah, those things can happen. They can be out of your control, and forgive her when his entire body is telling him he's been betrayed. So it's a tough situation for him to be in.
Right, exactly. But he's the neuroscientist.
Yes.
Right. He's
Yes.
very paradoxical, so to speak.
Yes.
In this aspect. And who are the other characters?
And then the two other main characters who are driven by their unconscious is there's an older woman who is an iconoclast, who is bucking all of the norms of society, and she's driven by a pathological desire to change. And then there's William, who is a very successful, very happy gay man living in New York City, who's made a great life for himself, but lost his entire family in the process. And if you went back to that moment when he said to his parents and his sisters and his brothers, well, I want to let you know I'm gay, the question is, would he have made that choice if he'd have known he was going to lose his entire family, even though it really isn't a choice?
And he lost his family because?
They're closed-minded.
Right, they rejected him.
They rejected him harshly and never spoke to him again. And he went on to make a great life for himself. But you wonder, this is not something he chose consciously.
Right.
This was something that he is. And it cost him his family.
Okay, so do you have a favorite character in this book?
Isabella.
Isabella?
Yeah,
Okay. The opera?
The older lady who is a patron of
Yes,
the arts,
yeah.
and who is, pathologically interested in doing the wrong thing.
Right. Who does she remind you most of? Or does she remind you of anybody?
No,
No one, okay.
no, she's my idol.
All right, there you go. I like that. That's good. So Ilana mentions in the book, she thinks humans are actually making fewer choices than we used to. A, do you agree with that? And why does she say that?
Okay, so once again, I'm not a scientist. I'm a storyteller. But I believe that it's slow. Deliberating is really slow. And we make a lot of choices very fast. It could be 120 years ago, after dinner, you had a couple of choices. You went to bed, you read a book from a candle, you had sex with your sibling, or hopefully not your sibling, sex with your significant other, although it did happen with the sibling back then, so I don't know, but the choices were few, so it was easy. But now, after dinner, you can go to a movie. What movie? You can watch TV. Which program? You can go to a lecture. You can go to music. The choices have proliferated to the point where I believe there's a lot more being relegated to our unconscious processes than there used to be.
Right, exactly. So you write in the beginning of the novel that brains are not reliably on our side.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
Yeah. Well, they're not. I mean, we all know this, right? When your brain is talking to you, it's not telling you good things. It's not saying, hey, you did great today. You were so awesome on that lecture. You just crushed it. Everybody loves you. It's not doing that. The brain is giving you the other side. It's always giving you the other side. And so it's not really your best friend.
Yeah, it definitely is not mine in many ways. I'll tell you that right now. Do you think there are real life societal consequences to believing we are all freely choose all of our actions?
Yes. So as I said, not a scientist, also not a lawyer. But if you look at the legal profession, a great deal of emphasis is put on intent. That has to do with how you wind up getting whatever sentence you're getting. A lot of it is what you intended. And some things are intended consciously, and some things are not consciously intended. It would be great if we could come up with a way to distinguish between the two. And I'll give you a really, really unpleasant example. So if someone has no money and they want dinner and they take a knife and they go into a grocery store and they commit a crime, that's a terrible thing. And they can be fixed. They can be helped. They can go into the system and perhaps get help and get a new job. There's ways, right? So, but if you're a pedophile and you're really attracted to little boys or little girls, and then they get the same sentence as that guy, and they go in and you lock them up for 10 years, they come out, they just want more little girls and little boys. It's so deep in your biology, your sexual urge, that it shouldn't be the same sentence. So I think that the legal system really needs to understand what's inside, what can be fixed, what can't be fixed. And I know it's harsh, but there are things that can't be fixed at this point anyway. And how we make those distinctions for intent and urges.
Right. I'm Drew Schlosberg with Cloudcast Media. You're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, enjoying a very cool conversation with author Deborah Serra about her novel, Lost in Thought. There's a pivotal moment of redemption and forgiveness in the novel with Fiona, Alana's birth mother. Was that a theme you were playing with as well?
You know, it wasn't. I kind of just wrote myself into that situation. It was interesting to me that this woman who had given up her baby 30 years ago had decided exactly how the father felt about what happened. And she never spoke to him again. And all that time, she was sure, she knew exactly what his life had been like. And when she meets him 30 years later, because Ilana enters her life, she realizes she had it absolutely backwards. But her brain had been telling her for 30 years that she had suffered and he had not. So that was a redemptive moment for her.
Right. So some of this action takes place in Albany, and you lived in Manhattan, right?
Right.
Why'd you choose Albany?
I have no idea. Must have been in my unconscious.
Neuroscience. Okay, we're going to go back to that forever and that aspect. Yeah, I was just curious why.
Honestly, the proximity was good. It was 2.5 hours away by train. It was a good proximity for her to go and come back. And I really don't have an answer for that. I've seen a lot of the buildings there, and they're very old and quite beautiful. And it was just in my brain. Drew, I don't know.
Well, good. Went out of the brain right into the paper, and that's good in the novel. There are a number of interesting anecdotes about the world of opera. Are you connected to opera for any reason?
So I had a lot of fun with that part of the book. My mother was an opera singer. She sang once at Carnegie Hall. And when I was growing up, there was always opera music in our house. And I was a professional ballet dancer for a short period of time. And I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. So that whole world is very familiar to me. And I was really happy to have an opportunity to put it in writing in the book. So I took that chance.
What's your favorite opera?
Oh, my favorite opera.
Yes.
I love Puccini. I love Verdi. I don't like Wagner, um, like most people. But there wouldn't be. I mean, yeah,
Like
it's
most
tough. It's
people.
tough opera. But yeah, I mean, La Boheme and Tosca. I love Tosca. Sometimes I like Madame Butterfly. Sometimes I don't.
Right. When was the last opera you went to?
Madame Butterfly at the Met.
Okay. Recently?
Yeah, that was like 6 months ago.
Oh, that's pretty recent. So are you thinking about your next writing gig? Is it going to be a novel? Is it going to be screenwriting? Is it going to be haikus? What's it going to be?
Yeah, no, I'm really happy to say I have absolutely no idea. I'm just going to wait for it to come to me.
Are you amazed that I even know what a haiku is?
Do you know?
575.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, well, the reason why, and I hope Miss Large is thinking about this. She's my 8th grade English teacher, and we had to do haikus until they were coming out. I remember 575. That's what I remember from that. And so, people who know haikus, I've never written a haiku outside of 8th grade.
Oh, I'm glad you're not going to tell me you're a haiku writer then.
I'm a not sports writer is about as far as I went on this. So what advice, would you give to, folks who are thinking about becoming, whether it's a screenwriter or a novelist, or any other type of writing?
Pages, just lots and lots of pages, every single day, pages. And when you have a day and you're sitting there and you've been 3 or 4 hours and you haven't written a single thing, that's not writer's block. That's molting. You're molting. If you're a writer, it's happening back there. Just don't get up from the table. Stay.
So stay and stare at the paper,
Yes.
okay, and stare until something comes on the paper?
Yes, because your brain is not inactive. It's running around in there, mostly yelling at you because you're not writing anything, but it's there.
That's right. Exactly. How about reading? When I taught a writing for the media class at San Diego State a long time ago, and the students were asking me what's the best way for them to become better writers, especially in the field of journalism. I said, read, read anything, and read every single day. And whether it's reading news, cartoons, it didn't make a difference. Mad Magazine or whatever the case may be. How much do you read?
I read constantly. I always have a book, physical book. I always have an audio book. I'm always listening, whether I'm cooking or walking the dog or whatever I'm doing, I'm listening to a book or I'm actually reading a book. And I would recommend that people always read just a little bit above their level. So for instance, I bought Yuval Harari's books. I'm really trying. It's above what I normally write, but what I read. But so I just take it chunks at a time, and there's new vocabulary every day of the week.
Yeah. I went to the dictionary a million times when I was reading Patricia Churchland's bio. And so I'm going to become a neuroscientist if it kills me, for God's sake, on this aspect of it. And it was actually fascinating to learn a lot about you, Patricia. And we'll be hearing from her in a little bit in this aspect of it. I'm a little disappointed that I have to read above it because I'm still a Mad Magazine fan, So,
Well, humor is a wonderful thing. Humor
it makes the world go around as far as I'm concerned,
It does, and it's done a lot of good. And one of the reasons there's humor in everything I write is because that's really how you reach people. It's through humor.
100%, absolutely. Any final comments you want to give to this audience about writing, about Lost in Thought? We did no spoiler alerts, so,
Yeah, I can say I did not expect anyone to read this book. I was at an event, and they asked the writers that were there, what audience did you write for? And when it got to me, I said, I didn't expect anyone to read this book. I wrote for television and film. It's a really rigid box. It has to be this long. This is where the acts have to be. You can't use this information. You can't use this dialogue. What are the people going to think when they hear it, when they see? There were so many rules that when I sat down to write this book, I just wanted to write something that I wanted. And that's where I am with this.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I was telling you and Patricia earlier, a long time ago, I was the president of the Greater San Diego Reading Association, and my friends would laugh at me, go, "You don't read at all. All you read is the sports section. What are you talking about?" But I really enjoyed Lost in Thought, and what was cool about it is that you didn't want to put it down, but you wanted to go back and reread things, maybe because the neuroscience thing got into me, and I didn't want to miss something. Did I miss that? And I went back and read it. It was an easy read. You had to think about things, but it was an easy read, and you really got wrapped up into the characters. At least I did. So.
Well, I worked hard to take Ilana to a moment of ultimate stress and chaos. So I worked on her with intellectual stress, with Adam, who was telling her all these things about how her brain works, which was alarming to her. And then I worked with her on sexual stress as her body reacted to a man she didn't expect she'd react to. And then I worked with her on social and cultural stress with this woman who does not follow any rules, and brought her to a point of chaos. And then ultimately to a point where all she wanted in the world was to make one unbiased choice, and unbiased by her own brain.
Right. No, it's very enjoyable. Well, Deborah, a pleasure. It's been fun getting to know you and getting ready for this interview as well. I think you folks, if you haven't read the book, you're going to enjoy every bit of it. I'm Drew Schlosberg, and you've been listening to another episode of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight in the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Deborah Serra.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
Cloudcast Media.